We continue with the second chapter of the Book of Kings. Shlomo has just been coronated as king over Israel. His father's still alive, but he's going to be the next king. And his brother Adoniyahu, who tried to assert and take the throne, was told to go home. And that's where we continue. Vayikrevu yemei David lamut. And David's life was drawing to a close. Vayitzav et Shlomo beno lemor. And he says the following, his last will and testament to his son Solomon. Anochi olech b'derech kol haaretz. I'm going the way of the land. V'chazakta v'hayita la'ish. But you need to be strong. You need to show yourself to be a strong man. Not necessarily a strong man, but a strong man. ושמרת את משמרת אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו לשמור חוקותיו מצוותיו ומשפטיו ועדותיו ככתוב בתורת משה למען תשכיל את כל אשר תעשה ואת כל אשר תפנה שם. And how are you going to show yourself to be a strong man, a person who is chazak? By listening to the words of God, the statutes, the laws, the rules, all of them. למען יקים אדוני דברו אשר דיבר אלי לאמור. In order that God fulfills the words that he said to me, Im yeshmeru vanecha darkam lalecha lefanai be'emet b'chol levavam u'v'chol nafsham le'mor lo yikaret lecha ish me'al kisei Yisrael. If you, right, descendants are scrupulous, if they're careful, they walk with me faithfully. You hear the language of Devarim, b'chol levavam u'v'chol nafsham, then your line of throne, your dynasty will never end. V'gam atayadat et asher sa li Yoav ben Tzruya asher asa l'shnei Saret Tzvot Yisrael Abner v'Ner la'amasa ben Yater v'hayargem v'asem d'mei milchama b'shalom v'yitain d'mei milchama b'chagaroto asher b'modav u'v'na'alo asher b'raglav. So Shlomo, you need to listen to God, but you need to do some other things. You know what Yoav ben Tzruya did? He killed Avner and Amasa, two other generals, and he did it at a time of shalom, at a time of peace. He gave d'mei milchama, the blood of war, not during a war, but during a peaceful time. And therefore, in verse 6, V'asita kechochmatecha v'lo tored sevato b'shalom shol. So act according to your wisdom, and don't let his white hair, don't let him get old. He's a threat to your kingdom. He's a threat to the idea of peace. So you need to be very careful with Yoav. David tells his son. And further, verse 7, and be kind to the sons of Barzillai from Gilad, because they helped me when I was being chased by Avshalom. And just know, there's also this guy, Shimi ben Gera, who was cursing me and screaming at me. He came down at the worst time when I was running away from Absalom, and he gave me a terrible curse. And I swore to him that I would not kill him by the sword. Viata al tinakehu. Right? David says, I can't do it, but don't let him go unpunished. And know how to deal with him and make sure that, he's taken care of. And so after these words, David has given, these are his last words, and it's a little bit difficult, you could say. A man who did so much is telling his son that these are the things that you need to do. These are the people you have to be careful. These are people you have to knock off. And then Vayishkav David Amabotav Vayikaver V'ir David. In verse 10, David dies and passes away. And part of course, what David's doing here, David had people who, David wanted a peaceful kingdom in many ways. Yes, he made terrible errors, especially Uriah Hittite, he made other mistakes, but he wanted peace. And he had to deal with people like Yoav and others who brought about blood. And David is telling Shlomo, if you want to have shalom, if you want to have peace, this is what you have to do. Continuing in verse 11, Vayomim asher malach David al Yisrael 40 shana b'Chavron, malach 7 shanim, v'Yerushalayim malach 33 shanim. David reigned for 40 years, 7 in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. Ushlomo yashav al kisei David aviv, vatikon malchuto ma'od. Solomon is sitting now on the throne of his father, and he had a very strong ruling. Vayavo Adoniyahu ben Chagit el bat Sheva im Shlomo vatomer Hashalom boacha vayomer shalom. So Adoniyahu in the last chapter went and tried to make himself king, but when David found out about it because of Bathsheba and Natan, he said, no, Shlomo's going to be king. So that brother, the man who thought he was the crown prince, he goes to Bathsheba and he says, can I ask you a question? And she says, speak to me, right? He says, he says, I'd like to speak with you. And she says, yes, please speak to me. You know that I was supposed to be king. And all of Israel were ready for me to be king, but it went to my brother because that was God's words. And said, so I have one request. Please don't refuse me. She says, okay, what is it? Enough with the, enough beating around the bush. Say what it is. Ask King Solomon, because he won't refuse me, to give me Avishag as a wife. Now, if you remember back, Avshalom, David left 10 concubines in the house. And what did Avshalom do? Avshalom slept with those 10 concubines, showing that he is literally in the place of his father. He is the new king. And so here, why is Adoniah asking for Avishag? Is he just asking because she is Miss Israel, because she's the most beautiful? Or is there something more to it? But Bathsheba, Vatomer Bathsheba Tov Anochi Adaber Elecha Elimelech, it says, I'll speak this way. I'll ask the king to honor your request. I will ask the king to honor your request. Bathsheba goes to ask to King Adonai's request to give him Avishag to the king. And of course, Shlomo sees his mother. He puts a throne next to her. He shows her incredible respect. She sits on his right. Vatomer, she says, I have one small request to me. And he said, yes, mother, I will not refuse you. Whatever you want, of course. I'll give you whatever it is that you want from me. And so she says, Vatomer, give Avishag to your brother as a wife. Now, Shlomo, we know, very wise man. Might be young, but Vayana Melech Shlomo, Vayomer Limo, V'lama shoel et Avishag Hashemit l'Adonayo, v'shali lo et hamlucha ki yu achi agadol mimeni, v'lo Evyatar kohen li'ov ben Tzriya. He says, if you're going to ask for Avishag, then you might as well ask him to become king. He's my older brother. He has Evyatar on his side. He has Yoav. He has a lot of people on his side as well. And the reason why he's asking for Avishag is what we just said, what Reuven did when he slept with his father's wife after the death of Rachel, what Avshalom did. He's trying to say, I'm the one. I'm in place of David. I'm the one with Avishag, his last and final life. When Adonai spoke this, he showed, I told him to go home and he'll be peaceful, but he is starting another attempt at being king, another rebellion. And thus, we're in verse 24. Nani, I swear by God who made me the king that today Adoniyahu will die. And Benayahu, the great warrior who was the head of the archers, is Shlomo's strong man, and he goes and he kills Adoniyahu. Ulevyatar koin amar melech anatot lech al sadecha ki ishma betato v'yamazelo mitech et aron Adonai Elohim lifnei David avi v'chi hit. V'chi hit anita b'chol asher itana avi. And to Evyatar, David had said, or Shlomo had said, go to Anatot. You deserve to die, but I won't put you to death. It's probably Shlomo, because you carried the ark of God for my father David. Now it's for sure Shlomo, because you shared all the hardship. Right? Evyatar was with David, but Shlomo knows Evyatar now was with Adoniyahu, so he doesn't want to kill him and tell us to go to Anatot. Remember this, there's going to be a Kohen in the future that will learn about who is from Anatot. Keep it back of your minds. A very famous Kohen who was a bullfrog was from Anatot. And now we go back to the beginning of the book of Shmuel. Evyatar is a descendant of Eli. God, in the prophecy, the first prophecy that was given to Shmuel, that Eli and his family will be removed from Kohanim, hasn't yet fully come true because Evyatar is still there. But now, hundreds of years later, Shlomo is removing Evyatar. Go to Anatot. You are no longer going to be the high priest. This is going back generations, a couple of generations back, to the time of Eli for not rebuking his son. So now we've gotten rid of Adoniyahu. We've gotten rid of Evyatar. And now we have to get rid of character number 3. Vashmua ba ad Yoav, ki Yoav nata achrei Adoniah, v'achrei Avshalom lo nata, v'enes Yoav et el ohel Adonai v'chazek b'karnot hamizbeach. Yoav hears about the death of Adoniah, and Yoav had sided with Adoniah. And so, even though he didn't side with Avshalom, Adoniah, he goes and he runs to the Mizbeach, right? He wants sanctuary. But we pointed out yesterday, Parshat Mishpatim, back in the book of Shemot, Me'im Mizbachi tikachenu lamut. If someone is guilty and the death penalty is their punishment, you can even take them from the altar. Shlomo hears about it, doesn't care that Yoav is next to the Mizbeach, and he goes and he sends Benayahu. Vayavo Benayahu elo al Adonai, vayomer elav kol amar hamelech tzei, vayomer lo, ki fo amut, vayashev Benayahu et hamelech davar lemor kol dober Yoav v'chol anani. And he says, I went, and Yoav says, I'm staying next to the altar. Vayomer lo hamelech hasei kasher diber ufkavo v'kavarto v'asirotia demei chinam asher shafach Yoav me'alai ume'al beit avi. So go and kill him and get rid of the blood, the empty blood which Yoav spilled on my father's house. Right? I don't care where he is. I don't care what he's doing. This is what is necessary. Ve'yeshiva Adonai demo al rosho asher pagah b'shnei anashim tzadikim v'tovim mimenu v'yargem b'cherev v'avi David lo yadat Avner v'ner sar tzava Yisrael v'Amasa ben Yeter sar tzava Yehuda. And this is revenge to him for his killing of two people who were better than him, the 2 other generals, Avner and Amasa. And of course, there's an irony here, right? Yoav killed them at times of peace. And so a place of that is for the Jewish people, peace, a place of going to God, might not be peace for the animals, but next to the Mizbeach is where Yoav is going to die. V'shavu d'meim b'rosh Yoav v'rosh zaro l'olam l'David l'zaro l'veito v'lechiso yesh shalom ad olam me'im Adonai. Right? The peace should be for the King David. Our line, our dynasty didn't have anything to do with this. Vayal Benayo ben Yehuda vayifkabo vaymiteo vaykaver bebeito bamidbar. And Benayo goes and he kills him, and he's buried in his home in the Midbar. Vayiten hamelech Benayo ben Yehuda tachtav al tzavav yetzadok hakohen natan hamelech tachat Evyatar. So now Benayahu is now the general of the army, and Sadok is now the high priest. Vayishlach hamelech vayikra l'shemi vayomer lo benalach. So now Shlomo goes to Shimi, the one who cursed David, and he says, build yourself a house in Jerusalem, and this is where you should stay. And don't go east, don't go west, right? Godfather chapter, this is who you have to knock off. And of course, this is probably the most famous line from the Godfather. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And any day, if you cross the Kidron, the Wadi, then you will die, and it will be your fault. And Shimi agrees. He's happy. He's not getting knocked off. He's not being killed. And so Shimi stays in Jerusalem for a long time. 3 years later, 3 years later, 2 of Shimi's servants, they run and they go to the king of Gath. They go to the Philistine king. And Shimi goes and he follows them. Shimi goes to get his 2 servants. And Shlomo is told that Shimi went to Gath and he has returned. We're in verse 42. Shamati. And Shlomo said, I don't understand. I told you, you leave, you're going to get the death penalty. And Shimi says, okay, I agree. Shimi could have been killed years earlier. I mean, he's just accepting that this is his fate. Why didn't you listen to the oath you made by God, the commandments that I gave you? You know what? Right? What all the horrors that you did to my father David, and now it's being returned to you. And of course, right, Shimi came out when David was on the run, running out of Jerusalem. And so the punishment that's given back to Shimi, or his death, comes about for when he goes on the run. He needs to stay there. David wanted to stay there, and that's his punishment is also, in a sense, a midah keneged midah related to the moments of his crime. V'amel Shlomo Baruch But King Shlomo will be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before God forever. You cursed my father. You said, we're the bloody ones. We look at what we did to Shaul. No. You're the bloody one. You're the one who's going to die. Our reign, our dynasty will be forever. And so he sends Benayahu, general of his army. He goes and he kills Shimei, and this is just furthering the establishment of Shlomo's kingdom. And what Shlomo has done here in a very difficult chapter, in a chapter we say goodbye to David, who I've said before, probably the most instrumental, important, the central character of certainly, I would say, Nach, say the entire Tanakh, you could argue Moshe, but is Shlomo gets rid of enemies. And when he gets rid of his enemies, he's ready for a time of peace and prosperity. And of course, we'll see the challenges that come with those issues in the coming chapters.